Hi Pathfinders, Pastor Greg Taylor here. I put on my Pathfinder uniform because I miss you guys so much and wanted to keep Pathfinders in front of us. And a few weeks ago I shared a video about some things you can do from home. Teaching honors is one of the things that I mentioned, and so I thought, maybe this is a good opportunity for me to model that, to give you an idea of what you could do with your Pathfinders. And so I'm actually going to, take you through an honor. And I want to do the first part this week. Next week, we'll do the second part. And I'd love to get some other ideas for honors from the other Pathfinder directors as well. Since we have some time, and since I love playing guitar, I thought, hey, this would be a fun thing to do, to take you through the guitar honor. So again, this is a pretty hefty honor. There's some stuff you'll have to do on your own, and we'll get right into that. But as far as some of the material, I'm going to take you through part one on this video, and then we'll do part two in the next video. Now, the first part of the guitar honor is to research the history of the guitar and how they came into our country. Now, that's something that I'm going to let you guys do on your own. You can find that on Google. You can find some Wikipedia, historical records of how guitars came into the country. So I'm going to let you guys do that one. Let's go to the next one. Describe the difference between melody, harmony, and rhythm. So if we were to sing I Surrender All, the melody is the line of the music that you follow, the line of the music that voices sing together. All to Jesus I surrender, all to Him I freely give. Now the harmony or counter melody is the line of music that fits along with the melody. It enhances the melody, it enhances the fullness of the song together. And it might sound a little bit like this. All to Jesus I surrender, all to Him I freely give. Wasn't that beautiful? So you see, the melody is the main line and the harmony helps support, or the counter melody, the harmony supports the melody, creates a full volume. Now you can do that, of course, with voices, which we just did, but you can also do it with guitar. Sometimes if you have two guitar parts playing, two notes can also enhance the melody, the song, the fullness of the song. Now the third part is rhythm. Now that's one of the coolest things about guitar, because guitar is a stringed instrument and it has the melody. You can do finger picking, strumming. We'll get a little more into that. So you have the music being made, but the cool thing about a guitar, listen to this. I didn't play a single note right there, but I did present a lot of rhythm. It's kind of like in the guitar in itself, it's kind of like a drum set, in that you have your bass strings. You can get kind of the hit. The high strings are kind of like the snare drum, where you get the snap, and right between you kind of get the hi-hat. So listen to that rhythm again. So what's kind of cool about a guitar is you can set the tempo, the feel, depending on the song. Country's kind of got a little bit of a slower rhythm. If you're doing some hymns, you'll hear the rhythm a little bit more, and the finger picking. And so just depending on how you play the guitar, you can set all kinds of different rhythms. It's a really cool instrument for that purpose. I'm going to show you three types of guitars. The first, of course, is the one that I'm holding. This happens to be a Taylor, which is my last name. I couldn't go with anything else. It was a Taylor, which is a steel string acoustic guitar. Now this one actually is acoustic electric. You can kind of see on the edge here. That way you can plug it in through the hole here. You can go through a sound system, and it helps amplify if you're in a bigger group to get louder sounds. But you don't need to plug it in. You can also just use the sound hole. Now this is the sound hole, and you'll notice the body is quite thick. And because of that, the sound when it's played, the strings are strummed, the sound reverberates inside. It creates a fullness, it creates some bass, it creates some mids. So that you can just be at a campfire without plugging in and have a nice full sound to it. This is the acoustic guitar. The steel strings, you'll see the difference between those, but those are a little bit more heavy than nylon strings. They're wrapped around the tuning knobs at the end there. That's how they stay in tune. And the acoustic guitar is still made to be held. You can put a strap on this side, a strap on this side, and actually wrap it around yourself. Another guitar is the classical guitar. This is an example of a classical guitar. Now, instead of steel strings, it's got nylon strings. Nylon strings are a little bit softer, a little bit easier to pick. And you notice I'm already holding a little bit differently with my knee here, this leg out here. Instead of like this, you can hold it like this, but nylon strings, classical guitarists usually will hold it with the neck heading up a little bit like this. Classical guitars are made a lot more for finger picking. You'll hear a lot of the flamingo type of you can strum it, but you don't usually use a pick. On an acoustic guitar, you'll use a pick. On an electric guitar, you'll use a pick. On a classical guitar, you don't usually use a pick. You'll use your fingers, and you can get some really cool sounds. You know, that kind of thing. There's the strumming. There's a lot of moving of the hand to the, kind of getting some cool rhythm through that way. You'll see in electric guitars, there's a lot of up and down, and it's a quick up and down motion to get the vibrato. For classical guitars, it's a lot more side to side. Listen to this. One note, here we go, versus. And this is an electric guitar. Maple Burst, it's an American standard Fender Stratocaster. Beautiful electric guitar. This is meant to be plugged in. You'll actually see, instead of a hollow body like on a steel string, you have these pickups, the highs, mids, lows. And this right here, actually, this will switch between highs, mids, and lows to kind of emphasize what sound that you want to get. Do you want it to be muffled? Do you want it to be more clear? That's what these knobs will do. The volume knob, of course, high or low. This is called a whammy bar, which is kind of an interesting addition to the electric guitar. The whammy bar takes the entire length of the string and shortens it or lengthens it. So it's kind of a cool little effect that you can do. You do use a pick with an electric guitar. You can also use the electric guitar for rhythm, strumming, but there's of course a lot of soloing, a lot of melody action. The next part of the guitar honor is to identify 15 different parts and explaining the function of each. This is the tuning head, tuning pegs. You turn it counterclockwise, higher, clockwise, lower. Now these are the strings. We kind of already talked a little bit about steel string, classical string, the nylon. But these are the different strings. E, A, D, G, B, E. We'll come to that in a little bit. That's called the nut. Separates the headstock from the fretboard. This is the fretboard right here. This is where you replace your fingers. You don't place your fingers on the actual fret, on the metal. You won't get the sound you want. You do it on the fretboard between the frets, as so. You'll notice that there are some dots on the edge of the fretboard here. These are known as the fret markers, and they just help you to quickly identify where you are on the neck of the guitar. The bridge down here, now this helps lift the strings and keeps it so they're not touching the fret. If they're touching the fret, you'll get a terrible buzzing sound, but the bridge helps secure the strings and keep them at the right height. Now this is called action. If you look at it, you want the strings to be pretty close. All right, this right here is the saddle. As mentioned before, the sound hole, soundboard or guitar top. Now the quality of the wood is really important. I think I mentioned before, this is the pickup. This is actually the pickup controls. The pickup is inside of the guitar. Electric guitars a little bit differently. The pickups, I mentioned, were the three that went across the middle. But for the acoustic, the microphone, so to speak, is inside the guitar, helps get the fullness of the sound that's being created. I showed you on the electric guitar the tone knobs, but here's a volume knob here on the edge. Right here, you can control bass, the mids, the highs. There's a lot. You can pretty much get any sound that you're looking for just from the side. Not in a computer, not on editing. You can pretty much get it right here from your electronics. Inside, it's run just by a simple 9-volt battery. Opens up, change it about once a year. This is the electric guitar. You have your 3 different pickups on the electric guitar. It goes from the back pickup to the front pickup, and enhancing which one. And of course, these knobs, depending on which setting you're on, you have the mids, highs, and volume. So you'll get a very different sound down here than you will up there. And then finally, the jack. I showed you the jack on the acoustic guitar. Classical guitar, the one I have, does not have a jack. The input goes right here where you plug in a cable, and you are going through the system or an amplifier. So the next section is talking about how to hold the guitar. This is not it. There are different ways of holding a guitar depending on kind of what you're doing. Most common, is the campfire style. You've got it over your legs so you can strum along. That's kind of the typical way. There is a strap for most guitars where it gives the opportunity to stand up with it, and kind of holds it a little bit more at a higher position. For classical guitarists and for many electric guitarists, again I say electric guitarists because electric guitarists a little more commonly will do your soloing, your one note at a time, your melody. Acoustic guitars are a little bit more the strum, but they'll hold with one leg out, this leg propped up, this leg spread out. That way the guitar can sit a little bit lower and it can be at an angle, so you are more easily able to reach the strings. You can strum. And you can get to the notes that you're trying to get to a little bit easier than if it were down here at a campfire type style. Standing up with a guitar is not that much different. You can hold it like a classical guitarist would or a lead guitarist. You can also have it a little down here if you like it down there. A lot of people like to put it a little bit lower so you kind of feel more comfortable playing it down low. I personally like it a little bit higher so I can easily get to the notes I'm trying to play. Okay, this next section is talking about knowing the strings, the proper name for the fingers, and hand positions when you're holding a guitar. So I'll try to demonstrate this for you. I'll do the campfire style. And it is important that you memorize the names of the strings. You have E, A, D, G, B, E. Let me do that one more time. E, A, D, G, B, E. Now there are mnemonics. Easter bunnies go dancing at Easter. There's a lot of different mnemonics and they're all kind of silly, but pretty much you're going to need to memorize it. Now as far as fingers, thumb, first finger, middle finger, you have your ring finger or fourth finger, pinky. Now there are different guitar teachers who use different terminology, and that's fine. That's kind of what I use. But it is easier to say 3rd fret, first finger, especially when I'm teaching chords. 3rd fret, first finger, low E string. I think of first finger. I know 3rd fret in the low E. It's kind of like a grid. Now if I were to say ring finger, 5th fret, A string, I've got this here. And I know, okay, this is the A string and this is the 5th fret. Put those together. That way it's kind of like a grid. You name which string, what fret, what finger. It helps you kind of know how to find those chords quickly. Now you'll notice the way I'm holding it, it is really important, especially with this hand. You'll notice how I'm kind of coming around like this. I'm not flattening the strings. One thing that most new guitar players have a hard time with is they'll kind of do this, and you'll try to play a chord, and you'll notice if you just barely touch a string, it mutes it. So you'll try to play an E, you get the first few notes, and you'll get the... So that's why it's important when you're playing that your hand comes around to the point where your thumb is bracing at the back, pushing off a little bit so that you can come around and have a nice curve of your fingers coming straight back at the strings. Now this hand, if you're holding a pick, what I tend to say is you want the pick, the point of the pick coming straight back at the strings. So I hold it not too tight or else you'll kind of get a really hard strum. Hold it gently. Have the pick come straight back at the strings, and you want to strum over the sound hole. If you strum over here, you get a really high, tingy, weird sound. Straight over the sound hole, nice, full, rich sound. There it is. Again, pick straight at the strings, hold it nice and loose. This hand, nice and loose. Press down, and you want to be right in the middle of the fret. You'll notice I'm not touching the bar. I'm trying to get right in the middle of the fret, so I can easily hit the strings without hearing buzz. Beautiful. Now there's actually 2 octaves. Let me demonstrate that. You have your low E. All right, there's your next octave. Now notice to get to my high E, and you have your second octave. One of the main things a chord is made up is an octave with a fifth in between. So you have your G, fifth note after the G, walking 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, octave. That's what's known as a power chord right there. So it's the octaves, the G, the fifth note between. Now a chord, you'll notice, is a group of 3 notes played together. That's at least 3. That kind of gives it the harmony, the melody. You got the supporting notes. But now the nice thing about a guitar is you have 6 notes that you can put to make that happen, especially with an E. You'll notice 6 notes that support a full chord. Now a D chord, which is interesting, again you have 2 Ds in there. A D chord, you don't strum the bottom 2 strings, either the E or the A, because they don't fit. Listen to the chord here. Now listen with the A. Not terrible. Listen with the E. Pretty bad. Right? So usually, and this is the key, advanced guitarists would disagree, but the usual way they do this is that the lowest note in the chord is the name of the chord. What do I mean by that? If I'm going to play a G chord, my lowest note is G. Playing an A chord, lowest note is an A. D chord, lowest note, D. Almost always works out that way. In a C chord, the notes C, G, and E fit very well together. You'll notice also with chord strumming, the chords of G, D, C, E minor fit well together. So these notes just fit well together in the chord. So the key of C, the chord of C, is made up of a C, an E, a G, a C, and an E. Put those all together, makes a beautiful chord. One thing that's really cool in chord production is going from major to minor. And I'll show you E because E is a little bit easier to follow. So you'll notice with a minor chord, there's actually only one difference from a major chord, which is kind of cool. So if you have your E major, now look at this, I only take 1 note back to make it minor. You hear the difference? Playing in a C with the bar chords form. You take 1 note back, makes it minor. So it's the makeup of the chord, it's the notes in the chord that create that sound, either major or minor. Being major or minor makes all the difference in the way the song flows. Next thing you have to do is actually demonstrate 7 major and 7 minor chords. So this is pretty easy. You might have to watch this a few times, but I'll go through the alphabet for you. Starting with A on the 2nd fret. These 3 strings here. I'm going to strum starting on the A string. So A minor, B, which is an A moved up twice, B minor, C, C minor, D, D minor, E, E minor, F, F minor, G, G minor. Now that part's going to take you some time. You're going to want to look at some chord sheets. I can add some links to that, or you can find them on Google pretty easy, but it'll take a while to go through those chords. But in case you're stuck on where the fingers go, hopefully you can refer back to this video for that. Now it's important to know the difference between flats and sharps. The scale of the guitar, kind of knowing how the notes go. Let me walk this up for you. And again, this will be helpful to have this written down. So if you walk up the guitar, these are the notes. E, you go to the 1st fret, bring it up higher, you get F. Then from F, you get to F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B. Now from B, you go straight to C. There's no B sharp, C sharp, and then D, D sharp, and then you're back to E, octave. Now you'll notice that it gets a little confusing, but if you can remember this, a G sharp is the same as an A flat. All right, so there's kind of that area between the two notes. G sharp, A flat. All right. Now the sharp is by the pound sign. You'll see the tic-tac-toe shape, and the flat is the lowercase b, and you'll see that right next to a chord. So if you're looking at a chord sheet and it says you're supposed to play a B flat, and you're playing this and it just sounds terrible, that's because you forget, oh wait, B flat, I need to take it down one. There it is, there it is. So the next part of the guitar honor, it says, describe the difference between nylon and steel string and explain the reason behind your preference. Nylon strings are made of synthetic materials. They usually come with different tensions. They're usually a little bit easier to press down than steel strings. They're also thicker, and because they hurt less, people usually begin on nylon strings. The notes are warmer when they are played, especially the treble notes. The bass notes are also fuller on nylon strings. They often are used on classical guitars, flamenco, and jazz. Nylon strings also allow more expression and nuances than steel strings. Steel strings can be made by using many different materials. Some of the most common are steel and brass, and when you buy the strings, they come in gauges rather than tensions. For example, you can get a set where the high E string is at 0.9 or 0.10. The bigger the gauge, the better the sound. However, increasing the gauge also makes it harder to play. While the nylon strings are warm, the steel strings tend to be very bright, and they have less pronounced bass notes. This makes them good for most styles of music, and thus they're more versatile than nylon strings. Personally, I like them both. I don't think we really need to say it's one or the other. I like steel strings. It helps with the rhythm part of it. Of course, using a pick, it's a little bit easier to use a pick on steel strings. Most don't use a pick on nylon strings. Personally, I like the harder, the heavier strings, just because they break less. When you get the smaller strings and you're really going for that high E in the middle of a performance, you hear pop, and you're like, oh man, I got to finish this song. I'm only on the first verse. So the thicker the strings, usually the better they sound and they'll last. It does hurt your fingers. It's going to be hard for you to see this in the camera, but I have not had, I have had calluses on my fingers for years. And it's worth it. You know, the first few months, yeah, it's hard. You got to develop those calluses that your fingers will hurt, but eventually you can play for hours and not have to worry about the pain. There's a spiritual lesson in that for you. So the next section talks about demonstrate the use of a capo and how to replace guitar strings. And the section after that says play a song using at least 2 different techniques. So I will do part of 12 and I will do 13. And then I think we're going to have to end the video at that point, at least part 1. Demonstrate the use of a capo. Now here is a capo. There are many different types of capos. You want this capo to be strong enough where it will hold the strings down for you. Now I'm not a huge fan of capos, I'll tell you that. Honestly, in my opinion, my dad was a professional musician, and so anytime you cheat on guitar, he would get really upset, or cheat in music or do it the easy way, he would get upset. So kind of, this is my own bias. I'm not a big fan of capos. I feel like you really need to be able to play every chord everywhere on the neck. However, it does come in handy, and yes, I have used them from time to time. And I will say this, using a capo can create some unique sounds that would be difficult or impossible to do without. This is the basic use of the capo. If I'm playing, let's say, if I'm playing Let Us Come Together, and I've got those 3 chords down, but then someone in the audience yells, "It's too low, I can't sing that low," because that's what happens. If I only know those 3 chords, I'm in trouble. So this is where a capo can come. Again, I don't like it, but this is where a capo can come in handy. I will simply move it to the 2nd fret, and I'll continue playing the exact same thing, my D, G, and A. And then they're like, "It's still too low." I just take the capo and move it up. It's still too low. Okay, Okay, let's move it up. Okay, by that time you get the idea. Now, you can use the capo to do that, but if you're playing in D, and you realize, oh, that's too low, rather than put a capo on, you could just say, I'm going to change my chord progression, I'm going to change the key, and I'm going to play it instead of D, I'm going to start E. Or you could do... So just knowing the chords, knowing the progressions, it can kind of rid you of the use of the need for a capo. There are some things, some people will do some creative tunings and they'll like use the capo and only capo the bottom strings. And they'll kind of get some creative chords. And there are some things you can do with the capo, but again, I'm not a huge fan. Play a song using two different techniques. Now I'll show you, and you're gonna have to do this on your own to get the honor, but I'll show you just a kind of an idea. This is a steel string, this is the basic campfire style. We'll do Lord, I Lift Your Name on High. Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us. Now check this out. I can also do this, a finger picking. We'll go into a little more detail about this. But placing my pinky on the fretboard, I usually will use my ring finger, middle finger, and first finger on the high strings, and my bass 3 strings are responsible from my thumb, okay? So check this out. Instead of strumming, you came from heaven to earth to show the way, from the earth to the cross, my debt to pay. So again, same song, different feel, different strumming patterns. And I'm supposed to show you a classical. I love to play this song, If You Have Faith Like a Grain of Mustard. If you have faith like a little grain of mustard, that's what the Lord says to you. If you have faith like a little grain of mustard, that's what the Lord says to you. You see how I do the nice flamingo, using your whole hand, not using a pick. You can tell the mountain, move out of the way, move out of the way, move out of the way. Okay, well I think I'm going to stop there because that's a lot to take in. But print off your chord sheets, start working those fingers, getting the correct positioning of the guitar, try out an electric and acoustic. See, maybe try both and see what you like best. And this is the end of part 1, and we'll get part 2 for you next time. Hopefully give you a little something to practice as you're in quarantine. Pathfinders, love you guys. God bless you. And let's stay in touch. We're praying for you and praying that God will make awesome things come from this difficult situation. See you soon.